Good evening, everyone, and thanks for attending our online development management forum. My name is Alex Bushell, and I'm a manager in Camden's planning team. You can take part. This forum is to raise awareness among the local community about this emerging development proposal in your area. Tonight we're discussing two sites at Camley Street. Both relate to sites currently occupied by industrial users. Site A is the triangle of land north of the railway line, and Site B is the smaller site to the south, both of which are to the east of Camley Street. This forum allows the developer and the council to hear your views. So I'll just say a little bit about the purpose of a DM forum. It raises awareness of future schemes, as I've already said. It lets the developer show their proposals and hear your views. And it gets issues and concerns out in the open at an early stage. And it helps with more meaningful involvement on proposed schemes. A few things about what it is not. It's not a decision-making forum, so we haven't formed a view yet, and we won't comment on the merits of the proposal. Obviously, your views are important to our assessment, and we need to hear those first. It's not a formal consultation process, and consultation will happen as normal when a planning application is made, and you'll have that opportunity to make representations at that point. And it's not to discuss non-planning issues in the area or other schemes. Discussion must only relate to planning implications of the development and the impact on the local community. It is not a political meeting. Please don't use it for making statements about political issues or non-planning matters. We would like to hear your views and questions about the proposals. If you've registered for the event, you can submit questions using the on-screen forms. That's in the box below the video. But I would ask that you aren't rude or disrespectful, and of course, that you keep your comments or questions to relevant planning matters. So, to the proposals for the site, I'm just going to jump to another screen here. Forgive me for a second. So, it's the demolition of all buildings on both sites, buildings and structures. For Site A, there are 3 new buildings of 10, 10 and 15 stories. And within those buildings, there'll be 119 homes, and these are all affordable housing, social rent. And in addition to that, there's approximately 2,100 square meters of affordable studio and workshop space. Now, on Site B, south of the railway line, there are 3 new buildings proposed, and their heights range from 10, 13 to 31 stories. And within those, you've got 282 homes. 203 of those are for private sale, and 79 are intermediate rent, another form of affordable housing. And in addition to that, there's approximately 28,600 square meters of life science, light industry, and commercial space. And across both sites, public realm and landscaping improvements. Okay, back to, sorry, excuse me a second. I'm just navigating between 3. So I'm going to introduce the teams now. From the Camden side, I'm just going to concentrate on the presenting officers and the coordinating officer for the developer at this point. So we've got Chris Smith, and he's the planning case officer at for the scheme. Can you introduce yourself, please, Chris?
Yep. Hello, everybody. I'm Chris Smith, Principal Planner at Camden.
Thank you, Chris. In the background, we've got Dawn Allett, our Community Liaison Officer, and Bethany Cullen. She's the head of DM and my backup if anything goes wrong with the technology my end. Turning to the developer team, we've got two presenting architects and Oliver Jefferson, who's from Turley's, the planning consultant, and he's going to coordinate questions to the wider developer teams. Could you introduce yourself, please, Oliver?
Good evening, everyone. My name's Oliver Jefferson. I'm a director at planning consultancy Turley, and I am the planning consultant for this development.
Thank you, Oliver. And now we turn to Chris Allen. He's from Field and Clegg Bradley Studios, and he's the architect for Site A, north of the railway line. Chris, could you introduce yourself?
Good evening, everyone. Yes, Chris Allen here, partner at Field and Clegg Bradley Studios, and architect of Site A.
Thank you, Chris. And now I turn to Afra Van Land from Morris & Co. Architects, and she's the architect for Site B. Afra.
Thank you, Alex. Good evening, everyone. My name is Afra van Lant, and we are designing the 3 buildings on Plot B.
In the background, on the developer side, I'm going to introduce a few more people, but they won't come on screen, and they'll introduce themselves if they answer any questions. So we've got Jura Chihab, Camden's Community Investment Programme, developer for Site A. We've got Katsura Leslie, also Camden SIP and developer for Site A. From Ballymore, the developer for Site B, we've got Nicola Zach-Berens, Jennifer Ball, and Lauren Kehoe. And from Lateral, another developer on Site B, we've got Charles Moran and Rob Beecroft. And finally, we've got Tom Smith from Space Hub Design, and he's the landscape architect for both sites. Okay, we'll move now to presentations. I'll start with Chris, who will give a quick presentation about the site, its surroundings, and relevant planning considerations. That will be followed by a 20-minute presentation from the developer team, from both architects for Site A and Site B, so that's Chris and Afra. After this, we'll be moving to questions. Please submit your questions and comments during the presentations. And also, when you write any questions, please indicate if you're representing a local group or if you're a councillor. I can make it clear when reading out your question as to whom you represent, if you've given me the information. After presentations, I will read out the questions for the developer team. Because of time, please try and keep questions and comments concise. We will be sending you an evaluation form after the event, so there will be an opportunity to submit more extensive comments on what you've seen this evening to officers. So over to you, Chris. There's Chris Smith, first of all.
Okay, thanks, Alex. Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Smith. I'm a principal planner in Camden's development management team. I will provide an overview of the site constraints and planning policies relevant to the assessment of the anticipated applications. This is an aerial view of the sites. The existing uses broadly include warehousing, storage, and vehicle works activities at the moment. Camden Street runs to the west of both sites on a north-south axis. The sites are split by a railway line and its supporting arches, which runs east to west. To the east and west of Site A, to the north, are the Maiden Lane and Agar Grove estates. To the east and west of Site B to the south are more railway lines and the Elm Village estate. Next slide, please. So here are some photos showing the site and surroundings of Site A. There's a cycle and pedestrian footpath to the western side of this site, and also a change in land levels across the site. Next slide. Here are some photos showing the site and surroundings for Site B, slightly different context. Next slide, please. And as you can see in this slide, the sites are allocated for future mixed residential and commercial development in the emerging draft local plan. So the development for Site A covers the whole of this site allocation, S5 on the left, whilst the development for Site B covers the northern part of site allocation area S6 only. The southern part of S6 is not part of this proposed development. Next slide, please. The sites identified here by yellow stars are within the Camden Street neighbourhood plan area. Nearby conservation areas are shaded in yellow on this map. Other than the Camden Square conservation area to the north, there are no heritage assets on or adjacent to the application sites. This image shows how the strategically protected view in yellow and red on the image above goes from Kenwood House to St Paul's Cathedral, and it crosses part of Site A. So 2 separate planning applications will be submitted, which will be assessed simultaneously. I think Alex has already covered the description here, so I won't go through all of this again. It's mostly text-based. Next slide, please. This slide sets out the decision-making framework which any proposal would be assessed against. At the top of the hierarchy in grey is the National Planning Policy Framework, which comes from central government. Beneath this sits the development plan, which incorporates the London plan and our own Camden local plan documents. A new version of the local plan is being developed and is a material consideration in the decision-making process, but this currently only has limited weight. The Council has also published Camden planning guidance documents which cover specific issues including design, sustainability and transport. Next slide, please. So this final slide sets out the main planning considerations that we would need to assess any planning application against. Discussions on these points are continuing as part of the ongoing pre-application process. Regarding land use, the Council will aim to maximise the provision of commercial and community space on these existing employment sites while also securing 50% affordable housing. Regarding design and heritage, the scale of the developments will be optimised to ensure that the site allocation and policy requirements can be delivered within a scheme of high quality design. The architecture shall be exceptional, with all housing being of a very high quality. The development shall be respectful of neighbouring amenity, with the scheme designs aiming to minimise amenity impacts on nearby residents. In terms of energy and sustainability, the developments are exploring all measures to ensure carbon is minimised as far as possible through energy efficient design. Measures to minimise flood risk will also be incorporated into the design. In transport and highways terms, this will be assessed, including efforts to manage impacts from construction, provision of car-free development and high-quality cycle parking. Measures will be included to ensure that servicing of the developments is well managed and safe. And there also are community benefits, such as provision of community space, employment and training contributions, and public realm improvements, which will be secured through planning obligations as appropriate. So that concludes the presentation, or my presentation. So thanks for listening. Pass back to the chair.
Thank you, Chris. We're now going to move to a developer presentation. They're going to talk for 20 minutes on the proposals and show you the scheme. So over to you, Chris Allen, this time, who will start the presentation for the developer.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Chris, as well for that introduction to the site. So as you've already heard, I'll continue now by sort of outlining our proposals. I'll cover the engagement activities that have been undertaken to date, the master plan design that we developed, and then we'll follow that with further detail of the design across the 2 sites, which I'll share with Afra. Yep. So both of the proposed sites, as we've heard, are sort of Camden-owned land, and there's a proposed partnership with Camden Council and Ballymore Lateral. Camden Council continuing to lead on the delivery of Site A, as we've heard, the track record of delivering housing-focused regeneration projects on Camden sites, such as the adjacent Agar Grove. And on Site B, working with Ballymore and Lateral, Ballymore bringing that track record of housing and placemaking, and Lateral providing that expertise in science and innovation. So together, trying to provide a mixed-use neighbourhood that reflects Camden's ambitions for growth and opportunity. Camden Council formally adopted a vision for Camden Street in September 2022. These ambitions were developed in partnership with a steering group, and they cover these 4 key themes: homes, employment, open space, and community. So since then, they formed the basis of our design proposals and have been a metric by which we've measured our proposals to date. So the benefits of the scheme currently are the 400 homes that have been outlined, of which 50% are affordable. A range of new employment opportunities, and we'll cover those in further detail in the presentation. The benefits of new landscape and play spaces, making them publicly accessible, open to future and existing communities, and improving accessibility for pedestrians and cyclists in the area. And as also mentioned, those benefits to the community as well. So this programme illustrates the journey that the project has undertaken to date. So from 2020, with the formation of the steering group and vision, to more recent, to the conclusion of our original master plan proposals at the end of 2022, before a development partner was sought. Since appointed, we undertook several consultations at that time, and I think we've spoken to a number of you at the Camden Street Festival and other arranged events. With the new partnership, there's been a more extensive set of engagements over the last year, heading towards this planned pre-application and planning application. Looking at the plan ahead, the anticipated start on site date is around early 2026, and probably the earliest expected completion date is scheduled for 2030. This slide is just an illustration of the sort of summary of all of those activities and engagement to date that we had the opportunity to meet many of you in the community, ranging from the Camden Street festivals to more tailored one-to-one meetings. And those have led to significant feedback on our proposals and helped form the design as we've gone through over the last couple of years. And you can see in here the quantity of responses that we've both received verbally, through forms, or by emails. And tonight is obviously part of that process. And throughout this process, we've listened carefully, and there have been reoccurring themes that have emerged, and these have helped inform our design work as discussed. And so key themes have been around sort of landscape, safety, community amenities and provision of community space, affordable homes being a real priority here, and a real interest in the available training and employment opportunities that development can bring. I'll now move on to describe our proposals from our site response and the master plan. And it really starts here with Camden Street. So Camden Street runs, as we've heard, from the heart of King's Cross and Pancras Road up to Agar Grove. It's this crucial connection between Central and North Camden. And we've heard and witnessed its importance as a green quiet link and a key pedestrian and cycling route into the heart of the city. The street links also to the adjacent residential communities, so Elm Village, Agar Grove and Maiden Lane, as well as important green spaces that form from the natural park upwards. And this broader location is part of what makes the area so important for regeneration and future connectivity. Camden Street has a lot of great existing qualities, as many as you will know, but it also currently struggles with vehicle dominance, inactive frontages, which we've heard around concerns of safety and overlooking, but has the bones of a great street. So especially on the west side, has wide pavement, and as you head north, it's really striking the mature plane trees that sort of frame the street. And we've certainly reflected that within our proposals, both in the landscape and the siting and setting of buildings. Our master plan concepts, of which there are 4 described here, then start with Camden Street. So reinforcing it as a green street, the opportunity for trees as discussed, for new planting, for widening footpaths and increasing the connectivity for both pedestrians and cyclists, but also putting in provision for the potential of the future Camden High Line, of which this will be a key node in that future proposal. Our proposals also look to enhance and put open space that's stitched with the adjacent communities. And through that, we've really thought from the beginning around the best location of different uses here. So how do you bring forward homes and employment use across these 2 sites? Where do they best sit? And also the location of tall buildings, where are they best sited? So these principles have formed the framework for our original master plan. This led to the conclusion of the design in 2022, which we spoke to many of you about at the Camden Street Festival and other events, which sort of outlined the provision for both a quantum of 350 homes and employment space across these sites. Since then, we've taken the feedback, working both from listening to the community, but also working with a development partner and associated designers to improve on those designs. What we've done here is respond to both changing legislation and criteria. So on Site A, this has meant joining buildings A1 and A2 together to share in the stairs and lifts, looking at the recommendations of the Building Safety Act and providing 2 means of escape. Building A3 has also increased slightly in its size to provide 2 means of escape and staircases, but still shaped within the parameters of the master plan that we set. Site B has developed further. It has lost one of the buildings that was previously located on Camden Street to provide enhanced public realm and setting. It has moved its building frontage back slightly to allow for that widened Camden Street, and it's also looked at the opportunity of taller buildings. I should also say that's been informed by various technical assessments that have been undertaken to inform the detail of the design, including wind analysis, daylight and sunlight assessments. And the revised design reflects that sort of considered massing strategy, introducing those taller elements while respecting neighbourhood context, maintaining human scale at the ground with various approaches to building form, which we'll cover in the detail of the 2 designs. On this side, sorry, I'm a slide ahead, thank you. Of the 400 proposed homes, then we've already heard 205 are affordable. It's a significant proportion, and providing much need is a mix of homes for families, individuals, and also accessible homes for those with accessibility needs. Site A is located to the north, and that has 119 homes. As we heard, it ranges in height from 10 to 15 stories. And on Site B, we have the intermediate and private sale homes split between the 2 buildings, B1 and B2, so 9 stories and 31 stories. As well as the homes, we're also creating new spaces for employment, which we've heard. These range from the affordable studios on the north, which we've called creative maker spaces, to opportunities in science and technology on Site B. We've also included retail and food and drink opportunities to activate the ground floor, but also responding to comments received by the community in terms of the need of local amenity. There are a number of design standards and policies that set targets for sustainability criteria for the project. And so from the outset, we've considered these from the basis of our design. We set ambitious but achievable targets for embodied carbon, operational energy, aiming for long-term resilience and to lower environmental impact. This is started at the master plan level when considering the optimum shape and orientation of buildings, and since developed into the design proposals, including proposed energy strategy, the choice of materials, sustainable features such as blue and biodiverse roofs, and the use of photovoltaic PV panels on roofs wherever possible. The landscape is a vital part of our proposals, and it really stitches in all the buildings and the 2 sites together. So Space Hub have looked at holistic landscape strategy across both sites. The proposals create a sequence of accessible, high-quality public spaces on and off Camden Street, and that was really important in our design thinking and philosophy. And they promote biodiversity, demonstrate sustainable water management strategies, and provide amenity for existing and future residents, as well as link to the science that's happening inside the science technology building, such as the choice of adaptive species and considered planting that is required to mitigate the twin impacts of warming climate and biodiversity loss. It's an illustrative plan cut down looking at the ground floor plane of the buildings and the relationship to the landscape. And hopefully you can see that sequence of spaces that go from more formal areas such as Camden Square to the south, key arrival as you head north along Camden Street, a space for the scientists, residents and locals to share, to more informal garden spaces such as the courtyard garden with a sustainable water feature and play. On Site A, Camden Yards signals the end of Camden Street as a road, with pedestrians and cyclists continuing their journey past more formal play located on Site A and Rotham Road. The proposals in their total are car free, the only parking spaces being provided to service the blue badge spaces of the homes or otherwise blue badge and accessible parking associated with employment uses. And these have been considered to be placed along Camden Street and Rotham Road respectively. I'll now talk about Site A in a bit more detail and our proposals there before I hand over to Afra. So Site A, so 120 to 136 Camden Street, we're proposing 3 new buildings with associated landscape. The buildings are interconnected at the ground floor level, and this helps us mitigate that change in level that was mentioned earlier by Chris from the lower part of Camden Street up to the higher part of Agar Grove. Above this then, buildings A1 and A2 form interlinked blocks with 42 maisonette homes, access via an external gallery located on the railway side. And these buildings are 10 stories high and have a range of maisonettes. A3 is located at the south of the site, adjacent to the railway arches, and Camden Yard, as we saw, is 15 stories in height and has a central core and is mostly flats. Here is a cutaway view of the ground floor plane as it rises up with its associated landscape, so heading from Camden Street at the south up to Agar Grove to the north. A lower ground, we've included space for maker studios, which is the sort of affordable workspace that's anticipated to be managed by a future operator. These spaces currently have been designed flexibly so that the internal layouts can adapt and respond to different needs of the operators in the future, or even the makers themselves. And hopefully it will attract an interesting mix of creative types. And we've considered things from basket weavers to costume designers and much more. As well, the ground also houses all of the plant, cycle, and refuse requirements that service both the maker spaces, but also the residents and the residential uses. So I've described the sort of number of homes, but so Site A is 119 homes, and this is a section through the building that shows the ground and lower ground area of maker space, how it relates to a changing level from left to right as you slope down from Rotham Road, and then the heights of those respective buildings and their uses. And this is an illustration of one of our maisonette types that we've looked at. So we've done really carefully considered the different types of homes, how they're used, the space planning of them, and how they can serve different sized families. So this is an illustration of axonometric view of one of our maisonettes over 2 stories with a separate kitchen to living and dining. And you enter on the ground floor from that gallery access as described and as shown on the top left image, and with bedrooms on the upper floor. And then very generous private amenity balcony here looking west over Rotham Road towards Agar Grove. Back out the building to the landscape, which I've already loosely described, but the landscape has to do quite a bit to mitigate the level difference we described, as well as provide new play spaces, new public space, and contribute positively to biodiversity. At the north, we propose a biodiversity garden, which is the sort of formal welcome and hopefully start of the new Camden Street, completing Rotham Road with a 2-sided street. And as you head south, you're greeted by places to pause, places to sit, outside new residential entrances, and doorstep play for young children. And then finally, Camden Yard, which has to be a very functional space, has to link and connect with all of those existing uses and movements that already exist across the site, and anticipate both the Maiden Lane footbridge remaining, the future of the Camden High Line, and perhaps in the future, the opening of the network rail arches into this space. And this is a sketch illustration of that part of the landscape to the south. So from the yard, showing that relationship of the residential entrances, the makerspace entrance and the buildings, the arrival from the underpass, and then here, most crucially, is that continued connection for cyclists and pedestrians up to Rotham Road that replaces the existing provision on site at the moment. And then character and materiality. So these are some sketch views that show the proposals from the north of Agar Grove, looking south on Rotham Road, dealing with the triangular nature of the site. And as you head south, you find the residential entrances and this sort of arch motif, which we've used along the elevation of the building that faces Rotham Road, referencing the heritage and character. And materiality, we've chosen brick as predominantly the material, providing robustness, high quality, and using sort of considered detailing to provide texture and variegation in the facade. And the final view from me is the next slide, which is of Camden Yard. So explain that sort of activity that's potentially there in the centre of the site, the relationship with the residential entrances, the opportunity of connecting through, and you can see the existing Maiden Lane footbridge still here. Perhaps that would be redesigned in the future. And then to the left of the image, looking up at the new landscape that leads you up towards Agard Grove. So that's all from me, and I'll now hand over to Afra to explain the proposals of Site B. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Yes, so I will talk through our proposals for Site B in the following slides. So to summarise, as I touched on earlier, we have 3 buildings on our site, perhaps 3.5, which I'll touch on in a minute. The building labelled B1 that you can see on the screen there is a 31-storey tall building, which includes 219 homes in total, of which there are 199 market sale, as well as about 20 intermediate rent homes proposed within that building. We have a range of kind of residential amenity, also focused on the lower levels of that building, kind of enabling the grounding of it. We have B2, which is a building fronting onto Camden Street, which is a 9-storey building, which we've looked to really encourage kind of activation of Camden Street through 2 retail units that are kind of bookending that building at ground. And then we've got B3, which again is tucked towards the east, towards the railway side of the site, which will house new science and technology working space, so commercial space, about 30,000 square meters of GIA. And again, we're very excited about the kind of opportunities for activating the frontage there through a range of uses, which I'll touch on in the next slide. So what you can see here is a kind of cutaway axo of the site. So you can see the ground floor spaces that we're proposing here. I'll start kind of at the bottom of the page and work my way up. So as Chris has outlined, a key aspect of our proposals here are very much to kind of celebrate the green quality that Camden Street already has with these very generous trees. So we're looking to set back the B2 building that fronts onto Camden Street, enabling that kind of green connection to continue and to be enhanced further. We've got Camden Square, which both B2 and B3 front onto. There is a kind of generous reception space for that commercial building, and also a mixer space, which we're very excited about, which can host a number of uses, both for the community, for the new residents, and for the new scientists who will be working in this building. We then have behind it the kind of high-tech industrial space proposed, so cutting edge work being carried out here, and again, very much kind of opportunities for displaying that and celebrating that within the mixer space and sharing that with the wider community, as well as kind of generating jobs, etc. for this area. The entrance of the B2 building is off Camden Street with a kind of view through into the courtyard, which again, Chris has already touched on. We're very excited about the proposals here for encouraging a very natural means of dealing with flood alleviation, as well as kind of offering a really playful landscape here, which we think will be really exciting. And then towards the top of the page, we have the base of the B1 building, the entrance of which is kind of on the apex there in the middle of the page. And then with the opportunity of creating perhaps a cafe space to Camden Square, as well as an additional kind of retail space to the north. Apologies, you've jumped onto the next slide already. So you can see here a visualization of what we're proposing. So we very much look to build on all the master plan work that had happened previously. And we've looked to kind of develop a series of buildings that share some identities, but also have kind of their own distinct characters, coming together to, as I've kind of touched on, frame this new central square, which will offer, we feel, a really wonderful kind of arrival point to this new piece of neighbourhood, and kind of complementing the existing neighbourhood qualities that exist, and offering great spaces for the whole community to come together. You can see here on the corner, we've got the mixer space that I touched on earlier, kind of fronting onto the east of that space. In terms of the kind of material qualities that we're looking to use here for the science and technology building, we're proposing a precast framework. And the idea here being that it's very much a kind of framework that is really robust and can adapt and change over its life as it needs to for this evolving field of science. And then on the left, you can see here we've got the B2 proposals, which we are looking to, we would like to see in a kind of light white brick with a complementary kind of bronze metalwork. So keeping that palette fairly neutral and working well with the context. And then for the B1 building, that's sitting behind there, that you can see, we're looking at again a precast framework, just in terms of optimal kind of construction, and so we're looking for precast piers there, and then creating some kind of joy in a brighter color that we could introduce there. And then on the left, you can see some sketches of the landscape proposals, where we're looking to create these rain gardens, which can offer great kind of landscaping amenity all year round. So they might be flooded in some seasons, and kind of offer kind of rocky landscapes in others. Next slide, please. And this is the proposals of both Site A and Site B coming together here within the context, as well as the kind of emerging Agar Grove proposals. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Afra, and both Chris's, for your presentations. The rest of the session is for you to ask questions. Now, I've already got 18 questions that I'll start to work through. This is an opportunity for you to express your views. Please feel free to keep them coming, but keep them, if possible, keep the questions and comments concise. I will read them out, and I will say your name, and if you represent a local group or organisation, I will apologise in advance if I mispronounce, because I'm just reading it from a script. If there are several questions around a similar theme, I'll try and group them together. We've programmed this event to finish by 9 p.m. Hopefully we'll have enough time this evening to get through all the questions, but if we don't, we'll have a record of your questions and we'll come back to you with a response from the developer. Now, before this event, we did ask people if they wanted to submit questions via the video questions page. One of you did this, so thank you, Willow. Willow Tang sent us a question. Could you please play the video question?
Assessment being done for the proposed Site B buildings, including the impact on our home's right to light, and will this result be shared with affected residents before the planning submission? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll read out a transcript of that in order for the benefit of the developer team, and then hand over to them to answer the question. So Willow asks, "Hello, I'm a resident of Elm Village, Block D. She would like to know whether a full daylight and sunlight assessment has been carried out for the proposed buildings, and that will include the impact on her home in Elm Village." And others, I imagine, if you could, when you answer the question, and will this result be shared with affected residents before the planning submission? So over to you, Oliver, to whomever wants to answer that question. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Alex. Thanks for the question. I think I will take this one. So the designs have been influenced by daylight and sunlight advice, which we've received as we've sort of iteratively gone through the proposals. They have informed the layouts, the location of buildings, which have very much been geared to minimise impacts on neighbours. A full sunlight and daylight assessment related to all affected windows will be submitted with the planning application. That will then be available for everyone to review and make comments on. And the local planning authority will have the role of reviewing that and judging the effects of that. We're confident that they are well thought through and will be overall, we feel they'll be acceptable, but that will all be a very transparent process that everyone that wants to look at the full submission pack will be able to engage with fully.
Okay, thank you, Oliver. I'm now going to turn to some questions, and I think what we will start with is the subject area we'll start with is design and heritage, which includes conservation impacts, height, scale, massing, and so on and so forth. So we'll start with the just a general question here from Lorena Jans, and this is the question is, what's the planned height per building and what's the timeline for the project? Back over to you, Oliver.
Great, thank you. I think if we can get up slide 13 on the presentation, I think that would be helpful. Otherwise I can talk it through. Yeah, that's the correct one. So I think it runs from ground plus 9, so 10 stories, up to ground plus 14, and we express it in sort of ground plus, so it's clear what we're talking about. On the Cedar Way site, we go from ground plus 8 up to ground plus 31, and B3 sits between the two, as you can see there at ground plus 12. And then, sorry, the second half was in relation to
the programme.
The programme. So I think I'll pass over to Lauren to just summarise the programme from planning and sort of the build programme from there on as well.
Yeah, I can do that. So in terms of high level, we do have a slide that covers that that kind of diagram that Chris showed up in terms of our consultation process, but a very high level. We are looking to submit autumn this year in full planning application, hoping to get work towards a consent in spring of next year, and then looking for construction to start in 2026. And based on that build programme, yeah, there is that slide. Early occupancy would be looking at 2030. So that's where we are at the moment in terms of those timeframes.
Okay, thank you. I'm now going to turn to questions from two individuals, Peter Hullat and James Burke. So we have from Peter, he's asking, is one of the blocks 31 stories high? Well, I'll answer that. Yes, it is proposed to be that height at the moment. And James then goes on to say, I believe a 31-story building would be far too tall in comparison with the neighbouring buildings. So, what do you feel about the construction of a building that would be at least 300 feet tall in the neighbourhood? So if I could pass that back to you, Oliver. to answer those questions.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so I'll start on this just by responding to the policy framework, or at least trying to summarise the policy framework. We'll try to keep it as brief as we can. This essentially guides what form of development is considered appropriate, and we've responded to that in how we've brought the site forward, how the designs that you see have developed. And then I'll go on to talk about some design considerations, and if we need to, I can also bring in the design team. So to just sort of take it from a high level, that there's policy support for optimizing the development capacity of sites. This is, broadly speaking, in order to deliver beneficial new development, so including new homes, new affordable homes, commercial workspace. And this is particularly focused on well-located sites. So this is set out in national policy, in strategic London level policy, and in this case, we also have the local plan, the neighbourhood plan, the draft local plan, and also some site-specific planning guidance, all of which has sort of guided our thoughts and will in turn guide how the local authority comes to assess the scheme. So just to summarise briefly, the London plan talks about good growth, talks about optimising sites and making the best use of land. It sets some specific tests and policy requirements around how tall buildings in particular will be assessed, and that relates to design quality, the location of tall buildings. It brings in a wide range of matters around visual impacts, townscape and heritage, the role of tall buildings in wayfinding and in legibility, assessment of environmental impacts such as wind, daylight and sunlight. And we've taken account of all of that in our technical work as we brought the proposals forward to the stage that they're currently at. And the London plan also requires, at a strategic level, the provision of a number of homes targeted for each borough, as well as workspaces, and provision of that floor space where it's needed and when it's needed. And in particular, focuses on higher density development on well-located sites. And so moving on to the local plan, that replicates many of those provisions. It talks again about optimizing sites alongside a key importance on design quality and response to context. And it also specifically resists the inefficient use of land, all of which starts to drive towards higher density development. It also sets out that the sites are close to the central London area, close to King's Cross. The Cedar Way site is within the Knowledge Quarter, and that has implications in terms of the types of commercial uses and the need for that commercial use. And it sets the scene for the south part of Camden in general, and the importance of these sites along Camden Street, which is a key local transport route, and also the importance of links to the wider areas such as Maiden Lane, links to the canal, which is all important in terms of the rationale for taller buildings, marking the significance of that location. And then the draft local plan has similar provisions, but it also goes one step further in that it sets out specific draft site allocations for these sites. Within those site allocations, there's reference to site optimization, to residential housing number targets, to the provision of a mix of commercial floor space, and also to wider benefits that will be delivered by that. So creation of public realm, creation of a strong sense of arrival into Camden Street, and marking these sites as part of the wider regeneration for the larger site allocation, the neighbouring site allocations, which Chris Smith summarised at the start of his presentation. Specifically, the draft plan also talks about the sites as being potentially appropriate for tall buildings and sets out some potential height ranges within that. And then turning to the neighbourhood plan, which is also a key development plan document that has a vision for supporting regeneration of the area, densification of the sites to achieve similar objectives to those that I've outlined, and refers to tall buildings in the context of Agar Grove Estate, King's Cross, and other tall buildings that are cited within that document. And then lastly, we have the canal side to Camden Street planning guidance, which talks about the significant transformation that is envisaged to take place within these areas, and also specifically refers to the opportunity for taller buildings in order to achieve all of the aims and the public benefits that development will deliver. And then turning from that, so that's the sort of context within which we've been looking at the sites and bringing them forward through a number of years of public consultation and design development. We've also gone through an extensive process of design and site assessment in terms of looking at how taller buildings can stitch into what is a very local context with lower-rise areas like Elm Village, as well as denser areas like Agar Grove and King's Cross. We've also looked at specifically that relationship on Camden Street, how to ensure through public realm, which is actually facilitated by those taller buildings, we were able to have larger areas of public realm, which helps create that public scale and also give that positive response to Camden Street, which is going to be much improved through the proposals. And we've responded to assessment of the London View Management Framework, local heritage assets and townscape views, all through discussions with Planning Authority, with the Greater London Authority, and we've also gone through external design review to sense check the key principles and the design quality of what we're proposing. I think that probably covers it from my perspective. I might ask Chris to jump on and just sort of reiterate some of the points made earlier about how the tall buildings have been distributed on the site and how we sort of reached that point.
Thanks, Oliver. I mean, you covered that very succinctly, I think, in terms of the parameters with which we've approached the design. And then we've obviously had to balance the needs and objectives of the site, the provision of new homes and new employment. And our initial early assessments did look at what is the optimum location for taller buildings or different types of buildings. And these were assessed based on a wide range of metrics, from the co-location of different uses to the benefits or not in terms of sustainability, to the provision of and quantity of public realm. And we settled on sort of those sites adjacent to the railway as being perhaps the optimum location due to their distance away from neighbouring residents. So the sort of the join of both north, south and east west railways, clustering some buildings around there, seemed the most appropriate in design context and setting. And through analysis, we were able to demonstrate that sort of mitigated a large amount of overshadowing and impacts on daylight and sunlight.
Okay, thanks, Chris and Oliver. I'm going to ask a couple more questions on the 31-storey tower, more specific ones, asking specific elements or about specific responses to set considerations. So Sarah Nicol and also Willow Tang asks another question. So I'll start with Sarah's question. She says 31 stories is unprecedented in the local area. There are huge concerns about the height, the increase in wind tunnel effects this may cause on the area, overshadowing of existing homes and access to light, and particularly such a large building blocking views of the horizon when looked at from the north or to the north, notably Hampstead Heath. Go on to Willow's question. She says, the tallest green B1 building is likely to be a prominent landmark in the area. Has an aerial or skyline impact study been carried out to assess its visual impact from a broader context? Additionally, we're curious about the choice of green for the facade. What is the origin or rationale behind this colour selection? Combined with red brick elements, there's a risk the overall palette may unintentionally resemble a Christmas theme. We suggest considering more natural, timeless materials such as stone or brick. A powder-coated green aluminium finish may quickly appear dated and diminish the long-term visual quality. So back to you, Oliver, to whomever would like to answer those questions.
Great, thank you. I'll try to take the majority of those, and then I think pass over to Afra to talk about the design and materiality on the Site B. So in relation to wind and also overshadowing, those are important assessments that need to be undertaken and have been undertaken to inform the location, the heights, the form of the buildings. And that's in relation to what the building massing does to the proposed public realm. So in terms of whether it's comfortable to stand and sit out in these areas, and I think taking a step back, over many years of tall building projects, lots of lessons have been learned and sort of in terms of how to design and how to respond to assessments. And so those assessments have been undertaken. They have informed the design, and they will be part of the submission of the application. So again, they will be readily available to view for members of the public when the applications go in and the local authority consults on them. And we're confident that we have the right solution to achieve a really positive environment, not only within the site in terms of public realm and onto Camden Street, and also the impact on neighbours around the site has been carefully considered, and the building sited in simple terms relatively far away from neighbouring residential properties in order to minimise impacts and make sure that those are acceptable. With regards to views, we have undertaken a lot of testing of townscape views, and that includes looking at where are the buildings visible from in the surrounding area, both in terms of listed buildings, surrounding conservation areas, and the London View management framework views. So there are two views that are relevant in this case. There's site A is located within the viewing corridor of a view from Kenwood, which is slightly technical as view 3A1 in the London View Management Framework, which is a policy document for those that appreciate may not be familiar with it. And site B sits between a view 2A.1 from Parliament Hill and 3A.1 from Kenwood. So we've looked at views of that and how that affects the views of St Paul's and London more widely. And we've also done some testing of how within the immediate surrounding streetscape and some of the middle and longer distance views, the proposals are visible or not visible, as the case may be. And we've worked all that through with the council's design and heritage team, as well as with the GLA and the design review panel. And again, all of that assessment work will be within the public document pack. And we're confident that there's a good balance there between the site optimization that I talked about and the benefits that are driven or arise from that in terms of provision of new homes, provision of new workspaces and public realm, and also the visibility of those proposals. I'll pass over to Afra just to give some flavour of the design process that's gone behind the choice of materiality in particular.
Thank you, Ollie. Yeah, Ollie's touched on the kind of many technical assessments that we've gone through in terms of ensuring that the scale and form of the building is kind of optimally orientated. I suppose just in terms of the massing as well, we've gone through many iterations looking at kind of sculpting that massing appropriately, again with kind of long and closer views in mind. In relation to the materials in particular, so I touched on it in the presentation, but I would love to elaborate on it a little bit further. So we were looking to create kind of distinct identities for each of these three buildings, at the same time kind of developing a complementary assembly of buildings. So we're very conscious that these buildings will be read together and are sitting next to each other, as well as within the kind of existing context. We're always very mindful of that as we're designing. We're very much looking to propose high quality materials, and with that in mind as well, thinking about the carbon impact of our buildings also, and how we kind of create a framework of a building that can withstand the test of time and really kind of endure in terms of quality. So in terms of the B1 building in particular, we are proposing a green tone there. We're looking at kind of precast concrete piers, as I've touched on, and then a much more kind of joyful, reflective spandrel panel, as we call it. So the kind of secondary material within that tall building will be much more reflective. We're still going through the process of exactly what that material might be. So it might be a glazed brick, or you could achieve a similar finish in a metalwork, but we're very much kind of working through that also from a carbon perspective, as well as kind of refining those color tones, and again looking to kind of create complementary color tones to ensure that the composition as a whole works well. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I've got another question here on just general design height and massing, which I think has already been answered, but it's from Damien Downing, so I wanted to read it out anyway. He asks, is there an impact assessment on our existing environment? That, of course, Chris and Afra and Oliver have answered that. And then I'll go straight on to a question from Willow again. And this is, again, concerning the general design. From a community perspective, does the proposed design respect the human scale and integrate sensitively within the existing streetscape? Now, you've probably answered some of that. But then the question goes on, will detailed street level visual analyses and user journeys be provided to illustrate how the new development will relate to its surrounding context? I'm sure there's a quick answer to that question, but if you could just cover that off, please, Oliver.
Thank you. Yes. So I suppose we've covered some of that in terms of the human scale. And I think for me, that's really about how the public realm design really integrates the sites into Camden Street and helps to stitch it into the context, which has got a variety of different types and sizes of buildings and densities, and it will really be a really good, really fantastic sort of environment whereby members of the public, neighbours can kind of walk through the site. There'll be open space. There'll be a lovely green route through Camden Street, picking up some of the really great features it has, such as the mature trees, and building on that through things like setting the building line of building B2 back from the street edge or from the site boundary, and also for site A, there's some significant work gone into looking at what are fairly complex levels and relationships to Agar Grove and to Rotham Road, and to essentially stitching that in, having a really fantastic route up to Rotham Road, and as the levels change, having a really open level public realm area between Agar Grove and the site. And then in terms of how we, I suppose, illustrate that, we will be doing that through a series of views, which will be going with the application. Some of those will be townscape assessment views, so more of a technical assessment. We're also doing, and have been doing through engagement with residents, a street life strategy with a firm of architects called RCKA, and they will be producing a day in the life document looking at how existing residents, workers, new residents, children, different people of different ages, etc., will be using that space, how that will feel at the human scale, and how that sort of interaction with the architecture that you see on the plans and drawings and the landscape will work in real life. So I think that should give a really good sense of, for everyone once they see the full application, as to exactly what they'll be getting, if they support the proposals, which we feel will make a really positive difference.
Okay, thank you, Oliver. Another question, and actually this is a follow-up question from Sarah Nichol. She says, and it concerns the 31-storey building, would it not be possible to create two lower-rise buildings rather than one enormous building? We're still unclear about the views that will be blocked and very concerned about this.
Okay, thank you for that. It's a good challenge, and I think I'll maybe give some brief thoughts before passing on, I think, to Chris, just to talk about the overall master plan layouts. I think there are benefits of I suppose, more singular, taller buildings, particularly with regards to allowing more open views and not having too much development within one part of the site, which might actually block local views more significantly, and also to earlier questions, the impacts on microclimate in terms of wind, sunlight and daylight may also be more severe. So as Afra mentioned, we have gone through a process of testing massing, and you'll have seen in the presentation some of the changes that were instigated from an earlier version of the scheme to where we are now in terms of the orientation, the location of those buildings, how that relates to the public realm. So a lot of thinking has gone into that, but I should probably hand over to Chris, who will do that work far more justice than I can.
Thank you, Oliver. Yeah, exactly. As we illustrated, we did do a lot of work at the outset of the project, looking at site optimization and how we might position and locate buildings and their orientation. And there are certain constraints set by the existing sites, both its width and proportion, by the relationship, as has already been discussed with Elm Village. And so we sort of tested various opportunities and options, and we in balance found that for various reasons, locating height in a few locations was more optimal than spreading it across the site. And we've already covered those aspects of public realm and accessibility. Perhaps I could hand over to Tom to illustrate how that sits within the landscape and what the benefits of the landscape are in the setting and siting of buildings.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I can talk a bit about that. I mean, I think the landscape here is really exciting, really, in terms of what it's going to actually offer back to Camden Street and the local neighbourhood. So I think we really love the great big sort of trees that run down the street. So we really want to lean into that and amplify that feeling. So I think, we're really maximising soft landscape and tree planting. That includes things like orchards, which already exist on the streets. There's already apple trees growing there, things like that, for instance. So I think it's very, very exciting. I think it's tree planting really helps to mediate the scale of the buildings with the existing context. I think you then couple that with the play and all the different activities in the space. I think it's very genuinely an exciting prospect for the place, and a real benefit for the new development and the existing neighbourhoods and communities. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to now turn to a question from Stephen King, and he asked a very specific question about, he asks, will the red brick building on Upper Site 5 be constructed from prefabricated panels assembled on site or actual laid bricks?
Thanks, Alex. I will pass that straight to Chris Allen.
Thank you. Sorry, I just had to step away for a moment then. But I think I heard the end of the question, which was around how will the buildings be constructed on Site A. So if that's correct, I'll continue.
Is it from prefab panels assembled on site or actual laid bricks? Perfect,
thank you, and apologies. Yes, so we've explored both options for Site A, and actually we've left the options open at this stage, designing for both hand-laid brickwork and the potential for precast panels. We've looked at the embodied carbon of both systems. Each system has its advantages and disadvantages. So one around construction sequencing and speed of construction adjacent to the railway, the other about the long-term future of materials and the possibility of reuse of bricks in a handset environment. So the moment we haven't predetermined that, we've left that open to further development, particularly input in the future from the contractor, but we're designed with both principles in mind at this stage. So I hope that answers that question.
Okay, thank you. And we have another follow-up question that's come from Damien Downing, and he asks, how tall and how many stories is the building currently under construction on Rotham Road? And how will these new ones compare? I think that might be Agar, and maybe somebody from, Oliver, perhaps somebody from Camden SIP can answer that and do the comparison, or you may have done the analysis yourselves.
That would be helpful, actually, if the SIP team could jump in case I give the wrong figure inadvertently.
If we don't know the answer, we can follow it up with that.
I believe the new Agar Grove Block B is 18 stories high, and the existing Lulworth Tower, which is the existing building in the centre of the site, is 20 stories.
So I suppose that answers your question. The 31-story building will obviously be taller than those around, but you've heard about how it's being assessed by the applicant team. So, sorry, just bear with me. I'm now going to jump to a question for, sorry, I've just lost my track bit. Oh yeah, this is from Heidi, and I think you may have already covered this to a certain extent, but I thought I'd just ask it again, as this question came in before I started grouping the questions. You mentioned Site A being in the view from Parliament Hill to St Paul's Cathedral. Can you please provide more detail about view obstruction? Can you also speak about Site B and if that also is in the view, especially in regards to the 31-story building? That's from Heidi.
Great, sure. So yes, just to reiterate, so the site A is within the protected vista and therefore the wider consultation area which sits around it of LVMF view 3A, which is from Kenwood to St Paul's. The proposals have been designed to sit just below that view so that they don't directly affect the view. And we've also done testing of that, so it will be clear in the submission what the relationship is when you're looking from that viewing point with the building in place, and as compared to how it is now. Site B, Cedar Way, there is another viewing plane that is to the south of it, so it actually sits between view 3A.1, which I've mentioned, and view 2A.1 from Parliament Hill, but it isn't directly affecting those viewpoints or the wider consultation zone. So it is just a feature within the wider townscape when viewed from that position, and that will all be set out within the townscape impact assessment that will be submitted with the application.
Okay, thank you, Oliver. I think we pretty much, apologies, cat just jumping up. I think we've now covered design and heritage and construction impacts. So I'm now going to jump to questions around use. So, and this is also site layout and uses within the building. So I'll start with Tricia Curry. Tricia is asking, she says, there seems to have been little value placed on current businesses within the area, some which have been there for decades. Is there no way we could have considered for incorporation into the new development light industrial spaces? And she specifies local vehicle repair and the maintenance of family businesses.
Thank you. So maybe I'll start with a quick summary of the policy and the proposals, and then I think I'll hand over to the SIP team just to talk about some of the business support measures that have been in place. Yeah, I think it's a topic that is obviously critical for those businesses on the site, and we've have been engagement with the council over a number of years in relation to future plans for the site. As I summarised earlier on in terms of the overall policy framework for redevelopment of these sites, the proposals are there to, I suppose, optimise the provision of both new homes, which are not in all cases compatible with uses on site. So, for example, the car repair garages are more challenging in terms of accommodating that alongside residential. There are also uses sought within the site allocation policy, the draft site allocation policy, and within the other documents that I referred to, which are focused on particular uses which will have significant benefits in terms of generating employment density compared to certain existing use classes, and will also be able to enable the council and lateral to generate social value benefits and to realise inclusive economy benefits in terms of access of residents in Camden to jobs that are in growth sectors and to training and to help to access those jobs, and also outreach in terms of local schools and education. So there are lots of benefits to the proposed commercial uses that are aligned with policy relating to the knowledge quarter, as well as kind of broader policy around social value and inclusive economy. The proposals are really sort of geared towards that, as well as building in a degree of flexibility in terms of applying for a Class E use, which will enable sci-tech uses which are of themselves a type of like industry. I think I'll pass on to Zora to just talk about the engagement that's happened over the last few years with those existing businesses.
Yeah, thanks very much, Ollie. Yeah, so the council takes its responsibility as landlord incredibly seriously. On Site A, we're delivering over 100 social rent homes. It's incredibly important to be able to deliver this scale of homes across Camden, and we don't have that many big sites left. We've got a severe housing crisis at 8,000 households on our waiting list. We've got 1,000 families in temporary accommodation, and we need to find homes for these people. So yeah, we are very sorry for some of those businesses. I know they've been there for years and years, a long time, and we've been working with them very closely for years. We have a bespoke package developed around each particular tenant. We go there, we see them all regularly. We have surveyors looking for alternative accommodation for them at different units, helping them get their kind of leases in order. We've got business support helping them get their kind of businesses in order and work out their kind of financial planning. We have offered statutory compensation, but also enhanced compensation where it can be demonstrated that we can offer that. We've got business support, and we have actually had some great success in terms of helping some tenants secure alternative premises elsewhere. But as Ollie says, some of these businesses just aren't compatible in the future, in kind of future development beside residential homes, and particularly on Site A, the provision of homes is our #1 priority, both as kind of the council's objectives, but also what people tell us through consultation all the time is also the public's strong focus for the area. So we've got affordable workspace and affordable homes going in, and unfortunately, yeah, change can be very difficult, but the council has to make these kind of difficult decisions on site like this.
Okay, thank you very much. And still sticking with use, but this time to the proposed uses. So Keith Olahan asks, talk of businesses mentions scientists and high-tech business. What business take-up / appeal is predicted for this rather out-of-the-way location?
Great, thank you. I'll make a start on that, and I think I'll pass over to Charles to pick up a bit more on the market and the potential types of businesses that we are envisaging. And I'm thinking mostly of Site B in this respect to this question, but we can also touch on Site A and the creative makerspace. I mean, I think in short, the site is located within the knowledge quarter, so there's a strong focus on knowledge economy uses. It is close by to King's Cross and to other areas of South Camden where there are significant knowledge quarter and similar commercial schemes coming forward. But actually the amount of floor space required for those uses and demanded within the market is still well short of what's being delivered within this part of London, within London generally. And therefore there's a really strong demand for it, which creates all those benefits that I talked about in terms of employment generation. It also enables those wider benefits around affordable workspace to be delivered, and the commercial side of the scheme helps support the delivery of that. Charles, I'll pass over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Ollie. So Charles Moran from Lateral. As Ollie has pointed out, the site is located in the Knowledge Quarter, which is a nationally significant cluster of economic activity. And we do expect, and we know there's a very strong demand and need for accommodation for these future-focused industries. And that's anything ranging from businesses involved in AI, health, tech and research, robotics, advanced computing, etc. We've designed a building that is very flexible, so it can accommodate businesses on the whole, or all the stages of their enterprise journey. So from early stage startups through to businesses needing grow and scale up space, through to more established businesses, predominantly working in that research, product development and technology sectors. We've undertaken a lot of soft market testing already, which has demonstrated a really strong demand for companies looking for this kind of space in this location. There are a number of schemes coming forward in the local area, but there is still a lack of demand for the type of accommodation that we're bringing forward. So in summary, we're proposing very targeted and sector-specific space that's very much aligned with Camden's Knowledge Quarter vision and the growing demand for future-facing accommodation in this part of London.
Okay, thank you, Charles. So I'm now going to ask the final use question that's been asked, and it's more about specific uses within it, and also how how this sort of consultation that you will have undertaken previously can influence a project like this. So this is from Alex Me, and he asks, or she, sorry, I don't forgive, could be either. How can residents ensure that their feedback on development projects like Camden Street Master Plan is genuinely considered, rather than treated as a box ticking exercise? On an adjacent estate, residents complained about the placement of a mugger, this is a multi-use games area court, so close to residential properties. They weren't consulted, and as a result they have to put up with constant pounding. So are your play areas a good distance from homes?
Oh yeah,
Great, thank you. Oh, sorry, you go straight in if you want.
Apologies, Oliver. So yeah, I can answer that. So we do not have any Muga play spaces within either Site A or Site B. The play tends to focus on the younger age groups, so doorstep play, which is ages from 0 to 4 and 4 to 11. So they are quite close to the front doors of the residential buildings on both sites. But I think it's safe to say that these children are younger, and therefore they would be with parents or carers, and therefore less likely also to be playing late at night and making too much noise. I think it's also safe to say there'll be an estate management system in place for both sites as well. So we do not see that being a major issue, and actually we see it a real benefit. So it's very, very convenient for parents and carers and children to play in very safe spaces quite close to the front doors. So we do not see that as too much of an issue.
Okay, thank
Thanks,
you.
Tom. I might just pop in on, I think there's two parts of the question. So I suppose in relation to influencing developments, the SIP team has consulted on this since 2020, I believe, and through a series of different types of events, including the Camden Street Festival that's become an annual event, and various engagement activities and some sort of interactive workshops with local schools and different groups. And that process, because it's been going on for so long through the design process, has helped the scheme to evolve, and Chris has taken you through some of the moves there. So that process has been in line with that feedback from the community. A particular focus has been on actually the public realm, the open space, the play space, what local residents want from that space, and making sure that it's integrated into Camden Street and the wider area. So I think there is a genuine evidence of that engagement having an effect, and an ongoing commitment to continue with that, as we proceed into the planning submission.
Okay, thank you, Oliver.
It's also worth saying that we've had the Camden Street Steering Group involved in the project since 2021, and they actually were key part of setting the vision for the development. So setting those parameters, the types of uses, the number of homes, the improvements to green space, etc. And they were also involved in procuring our architect and our master planner across the sites, and they've continued to be engaged throughout the entire process. I think we've now had 25 steering groups held. And yeah, so that's been a really key part of shaping feedback and the development.
Okay,
Great, thank you. That's all right. And I think also Jennifer will also add to that in terms of the co-design process.
Yeah, I think it just as well touching on kind of that wider engagement work that's been done when we do submit the planning application, and we have a document within there, the statement of community involvement, that just sets out everything that we've done as part of the engagement process. Within that, we do sort of set out a number, kind of by theme, the feedback that we've received from across the community, and then we will set out specifically to kind of illustrate exactly how that's impacted the scheme, or we'll kind of set out specific design measures that we've taken in response to that feedback throughout the vision from 2020 all the way up to kind of feedback and events that we've done more recently.
Great, thank you. And actually, we've got quite a bit to say on this as it turns out, which I think is a positive. I think just also reflecting on one of the reasons why actually the process has been going on for a number of years is because we had early engagement with the community through early design work. The council then took the decision to procure a development partner, and that went obviously through cabinet in terms of decision making. And that process itself has been undertaken as we've gone through that public consultation process and alongside the steering group input, and actually the appointment of that development partner and the design team that came with them itself led to some significant changes and sort of reflections on how to take the scheme forward on the basis of that feedback.
Okay, thank you. Very comprehensive set of answers. I'm now going to switch to transport and highway impacts, and I'm going to ask two questions, one tabled by Chris Hyatt and one by Keith Olahan. So first of all, Chris's question: won't all this development generate more traffic up Camley Street? How will the developers ensure traffic remains as it is now or even reduced? And sort of allied to that is Keith's question, which is, with such an increase in local population, what additions to the transport infrastructure will be made, and what impact will this have on Elm Village? Camley Street is a dead end. Agar Grove has recently been narrowed and is served by a single bus route. Camden Road, Camden Town and King's Cross stations are all a good walk away. Not everyone can cycle, and Camley Street is already littered with poorly parked dockless bikes. Who would like to answer that?
Thank you. There's a few points in there. So I think as a key point on that, the scheme itself is car free, which is to say no general needs parking. There will be car parking in relation to blue badge disabled bays for both site A and site B. I think if I've got my numbers correct, there are 5 on site A and 9 on site B to cater for the potential demand there, and also to respond to policy requirements. I suppose the other side of picture is the assessment of vehicle numbers and trips, and how that relates to the sites at Camley Street. And we are expecting that the overall numbers will be reduced from the commercial trip numbers. There are some changes to Camley Street to facilitate better movement, in particular cycling and walking connections through to Rotham Road, but we're not introducing a new vehicular route in that sense. The servicing of the sites has been considered carefully and will take place via dedicated accesses to site B, and in relation to site A, for a combination of use of the yard space at the south of the site and also from Rotham Road at the higher level. So overall, the transport impact and the servicing strategy has been subject to detailed design, to modelling of impacts, and we are confident that it will all be acceptable in that respect. Apologies, I'm not sure if hopefully that answers all the different tenets of the question, but there was a few elements to it.
Let me just double check on Keith's question because it was a bit longer. So Keith asked, yeah, I mean, his question was around, accessibility and not every, that there's poorly parked ductless bikes and so on and so forth, and the stations are a good walk away. So more of a comment, really. So thank you, Keith. The next questions I'd like to ask more specific. One from Peter Hulat and one from Alini. I think you've already answered the question from Alini, but I'll read it out anyway, and in case you want to add anything. But she asks, why does this project have parking space planned, whereas the rest of new builds cannot even get a permit for roadside parking? Are there two sets of rules, one for the council buildings and one for all other residents? How is this fair for us, and how is it responsive to a so-called car-free initiative? So it's a very specific one, that. So and then I'll come to Peter's question next. So if you want to add anything to what you've already said to answer Alini's question.
Sure. Okay. So yeah, I think I've answered that, but I'll just sort of reiterate. So essentially, the scheme's car-free in policy terms, and that means that there won't be parking unless residents have blue badge parking permit. Those will be provided in accordance with policy, which is essentially looking at 3% provision per home, as well as potential for additional provision to be designed into the space if required. And those will be allocated, based on that need. So whilst I appreciate that means there will be some limited parking, it is still virtually zero, and for that specific purpose that responds to policy. So hopefully that sort of answers that question fully.
Okay, thank you, Oliver. So I've got another couple of questions, and I think both relate to construction traffic, and they both reference Barker Drive. So I'll ask them together. So Peter Hulat, first of all, he asks, will Barker Drive be opened at the junction with Camley Street? And then Willow Tang asks a question here. How will the construction impact traffic and pedestrian safety along Camley Street and Barker? How will the construction impact traffic and pedestrian safety along Camley Street and Barker Drive? Is there a plan in place to ensure the road remains safe for local children, such as those attending King's Cross Academy, or walking alone to Camden School for Girls, as well as for cyclists who regularly use this route?
Great, thank you. So, yeah, Barker Drive is a quick one. So there's no proposals to change the pedestrian cyclist access through Barker Drive. We're not including any changes to that, and we don't need to do so within our proposals. The second question around construction management. So construction management plans and also construction logistic plans are, as you know, are required as part of the application submission. So that's a submission document that will be assessed by the council's relevant teams in terms of transport and other specialist areas within the council. The management of that construction traffic and construction activities will comply with all requirements in terms of hours of operation, etc., and the actual traffic, which I think is the sort of heart of the question. The impact of that will be minimised so that it's always safe and that routes are retained through the area for residents to come and go without sort of being hindered and affected by the construction process. Obviously, construction will have a degree of impact, but we will make sure that is very well managed and subject to all the controls that the council will place on us, and of course Ballymore and the SIP team and Lateral are experienced developers who have got extensive examples of where they have developed in these sorts of like urban areas without impacting unduly on neighbours, and developing a good relationship with neighbours through the process. I don't know if perhaps Lauren, you want to say a bit more.
Yeah, I guess I can add a little bit more to that in terms of, we obviously have our construction team in-house, and they've been helping guide that process, and they help us draft those documents for planning. So we really have that practical lens of delivery and buildability from a very early stage, and we've been supporting both Site A and Site B on that. So I think that's really beneficial. In terms of, I guess the other point to add in terms of general safety on site is through the pre-app process, we've engaged with Secure by Design officers at London Met. So looking at end state proposals and ensuring that safety is considered in the proposals and in the design.
Okay, thank you. I'm now going to come to the last question that relates to transport and highways. And this is from Stephen King. Actually, he asked several questions, so I'm going to ask them all together as one. So he says, great, the covering on the footpath linking Camley Street yard and the Maiden Lane estate is retained, prevents access to the main track. And he goes on to say, regarding the Camden High Line, please would Camden look more favourably on unused track spaces to develop a wider east-west London high-speed link on the Mildmay line to prevent people commuting across London and to get to and from work more easily. Reopen Camden Road's third platform as an interchange section. I think these are comments really that we will take into account and share with the relevant teams. It's not really fair to bounce that to the applicant team. He does actually then go on to talk about uses and specifically scientific workspace. And he said, and I think you've already answered this, but if you just want to address Stephen's point, if you just want to add something on this. So he says scientific workspace. There's a huge development of scientific lab workspaces currently under construction in Docklands. Would their development in Camley Street fall into a market where there is potential for oversupply? So, I mean, I know you've covered that, Charles, but perhaps you want to go back and say a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, just briefly, I think perhaps what that does demonstrate is that London and the UK generally is having to think in a very forward-looking way in terms of the type of workspaces we need to serve our occupational and economic needs. We've all seen quite a significant shift in how we use workspace, particularly office space, in the last few years, particularly post-COVID, but also recognising that technology is changing the way that we work. That in many respects is driving some of the new accommodation that's coming forward. And as I said a minute ago, there is a real clear demand to create the kind of future-facing industry spaces, or the requirements for future industries in locations such as Camley Street, because of their proximity to King's Cross and the Knowledge Quarter and that economic hub that already exists. So I repeat what I said earlier in terms of the type of spaces that we're delivering and the importance of creating high quality, flexible spaces that really suit the needs of the future industries that we need to drive in order to create the jobs and the economic prosperity that we need, both as Camden, as London, and as a country as a whole, and using that prosperity to invest back into the communities and provide those opportunities that we know are needed for local people.
Okay, thank you, Charles. Now I'm going to jump to a question that is it's down as public realm, but it's more of a residential amenity noise question. And this comes again from Willow Tang. She asks, is there a noise control strategy for Camley Square, specifically outlining how noise from the development and public spaces will be managed to minimise impact on existing Elm Village homes?
Great, thank you for that. I'll maybe say a couple of points and pass on to, I think, Nicola to talk to that, and then Tom, if he wants to come in. I mean, I think as a general point, the public realm and the proposed residential and the commercial, we see as a positive introduction, and that space will be available for the wider community. And so, in general terms, we're not expecting noise issues to be generated by it. We think that will be compatible with existing and proposed uses in the area. There will be a management strategy in place, nevertheless, and I'll pass over to Nicola just to add a bit of flavour to that, how that works in Ballymor's experience.
Thank you, Ollie. Yes, so we got our estate management team, which will be on site 24/7, and they will obviously look after the public realm. They will encourage people to use the space responsibly, and so that other people also can use the public realm from neighbouring residential developments. So we've got several developments of the same size across London, and they're all managed successfully in this way. And we've got, together with Camden, we will then sit down and have a joint long-term strategy in place across both sites, managing and maintaining the public realm and the buildings. Maybe there's something to say about the design of the public realm in terms of how we mitigate noise and in terms of the trees, Tom, that you touched upon.
Yeah, thanks. And apologies, I had to step away there, so I sort of missed the first half of that question, but I understand it's about noise within the public realm. I think was generated from people, I guess, and maybe antisocial behaviour. I think what we've got to remember here is that these developments will add a huge amount of more people walking around in the streets, and also more eyes on the streets as well. So there's a lot more overlooking and a lot more sort of safety that comes with that. So I think it's difficult to imagine, from what Camden Street is now to what it will become. But I think it will be a much safer sort of public realm space, and I don't think there's the ability to make too much noise within that. And if that is an issue, as everyone said, that there'll be state management in place to deal with that. That's an issue. So I don't really see that being a huge issue. And I think a lot of it is really down to the natural surveillance that's going to be there that isn't there now, that really makes those spaces safer.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we're on to other issues, and I have a question concerning Maiden Lane, and this is from Sandra on Ubi, and apologies, Sandra, if I've pronounced your name badly. Sandra's question is: Camden Street is close to Maiden Lane Estate. Therefore, are there any plans to demolish Maiden Lane Estate in the near future? Now, it's not strictly a question relating to this scheme. However, we have got a couple of people in the room from the Camden SIP team. As I understand it, Maiden Lane was one of the first regen schemes to come forward some time ago. But perhaps, Zora, would you want to say anything on that point?
Yes, certainly. Thanks. There's no plans to demolish Maiden Lane as part of this application or anything else, as far as I'm aware. SIP, my team, has been building new buildings on Maiden Lane Estate only as recently as 2017. So hopefully that answers it.
Yeah, no plans to demolish Maiden Lane. Okay, and I've now come to the final question, and I think it's one that you've already answered, but this came in by phone, so it's somebody that perhaps wasn't signed up. And maybe we could just finish with this, perhaps showing a slide as well. The question is: what will happen further up Camden Street to make it look its best? And I don't have the name of the caller.
Great. Okay, thank you. I think that's a great question. And yes, we should go to a slide just to have a look at that. And I assume the question relates more to the northern end as we get towards the Argyle Grove estate. So forgive me, I'm just having a quick skim through to find the best slide. Maybe perhaps we could go to, and Chris, jump into this a better one, but slide 17, which actually is a landscape proposal for both sites together. And that gives a good overview of the sort of whole public realm as you go along Camden Street. So hopefully will help to answer all aspects of that question. And I think it's really about, yes, that's the one, thank you. I think it's really about both the improvements to Camden Street, the way that Camden Street links into Rotham Road and addresses that level change and the integration of the public realm, and then the works to the corner as you go onto Agar Grove. I maybe will pass on to Tom to talk to that.
Sure. I can end on this. So I think as you walk up Camden Street, I guess you'll first, there's a series of spaces, and then there's a series of street improvements effectively. So on site B, you'll be greeted with there's a square effectively, which will have trees around it, have some play spaces, areas to sit. There'll be a cafe at the base of block B, and then there'll be entrances to the Life Science Centre. And then beyond that, you look diagonally into a courtyard garden that sits in between B1 and B2, so the two residential buildings. And so you could go into that space if you wanted to, and then come back out the other side, and then you go through the underpass, greeted in a kind of really nice yard space, which again have lots of tree planting and spill out space from the makers spaces, and potentially a small gallery or sort of an exhibition space for them. And then you'll move up onto Rotham Road. There'll be play on one side, there'll be tree-lined streets, and then and the entrances to the residential buildings as well. So and there's a really nice rhythm of sort of spaces and places and uses within the building that complement those and really energize those spaces, which is something that's really not there now. So I think it's a really exciting, as I said that before, but it's a really exciting series of spaces and places and uses within the buildings that really complement them. So hopefully that's a nice way to sum up the scheme.
Okay, thank you all. I think that brings us to the end of the meeting this evening. There were a few questions that the team couldn't answer, and we'll have a look at those, and we'll pass them on to relevant teams. Recording of the meeting will be available on the website in the next few days, and we'll also send you an evaluation form for comments in the next day or two. It is important to us to get your views of what worked well tonight and what didn't. Please don't hold back. I know there are a few comments about lack of time to prepare questions and so on, so put them in the evaluation form. It is also an opportunity for you to provide us with your thoughts about the proposals you've seen tonight. And it, of course, is really important to us to understand what you think about them. You might, just a final point, you might find it helpful to sign up to our email alerts for planning applications on the Camden website. You can select an area with the e-alerts, and then you'd automatically get notified when any application is submitted, and so it keeps you in touch with all planning applications in your local area. So I just wanted to flag that. And I'll finish by saying thank you all for attending, and good night. Thanks very much.